The internet tells us that people who use a lot of swear words tend to be more honest and trustworthy. This is from human behavioral studies. It's totally fucking true. And it also tells us on the internet that the comments are dark and full of spoilers, and they are.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Julie.
And I'm Diana.
Thanks for joining us back here. We're going to be talking about Season 6 of The Walking Dead, Episode 7, Heads Up, and Episode 8, Start to Finish.
Woo woo!
Whee!
Away we go!
We are, of course, going to be jumping into Heads Up first.
Heads Up. We're talking about Heads Up.
Heads Up, 7 Up? Like, did you play that in school?
No.
Oh.
Different generation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Diana is...
I would prefer to say that Julie is much younger than me than to say Diana is much older than me. Let's just leave it at that, okay?
Anyways, go ahead with the
right,
wiki recaps.
All right, quickie wiki.
Quickie wiki.
All right, so after hiding from the Walker herd, Glenn!
What?
Glenn encounters Enid and convinces her to accompany him back to Alexandria, where they find the safe zone surrounded by walkers. Ron sneaks into the armory and steals ammunition. Carol confronts Morgan, suspecting he's holding a prisoner. Glenn and Enid release several balloons, leading Maggie to realize Glenn is alive. However, at the exact moment, the damaged clock tower collapses, opening a breach in Alexandria as well. And scene.
So in an attempt to keep the heavy portion of this episode...
What would that be?
Towards more, not so much the end, but before we talk about episode 8, we're not going to talk about Glenn right away.
Why?
Let's talk about the other things first.
Is there a lot of stuff with Glenn? I'm not clear. I just want to state for the record while I'm reading the Quickie Wiki that, first of all, let's just jump right over. After hiding from the Walker herd, come on, Wiki. And someone from Canada is doing this because it's Ron sneaks into the armory and it's spelled totally Canadian. It's Armoury.
Oh, yeah.
Like color. Ron sneaks into the armory, and steals some ammunition. Anyway.
Sorry.
Sorry. Back to the podcast.
So let's talk about Carol. Carol.
I mean, if we have to.
If we have to. We do. Carol tells Rick about Morgan and him letting the wolves go.
Yeah.
And this is a bit of a problem because Rick and Morgan...
It's a small one.
It's a small problem. Well, because now Rick realizes why his RV was overran by wolves.
Right.
Because Morgan didn't kill him. He just told him to go.
Right.
So this ends up... They have this conversation about consequences pretty much and what happens when you make a choice. And... Morgan pretty much says, like, if you didn't let me go in Clear, in the episode Clear, then he wouldn't have been there to save Daryl and Aaron a few episodes back.
Yep.
When they were in the trap from the wolves.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, though, this time around, it almost killed Rick.
Yeah.
And he admits to Rick that he doesn't know sometimes if he's making the right decision. All he knows is that there will be an outcome.
Yeah. It's interesting because it shows he's really trying to show here's Rick and Carol are both black and white people.
Right.
Not racistly. They are black and white people in terms of
it's either this way or that way.
It's A or it's B. There is no in the middle. And Morgan's trying to let them know that
there is a middle.
There's some gray area, no matter who it is, no matter what they've done.
Right.
There's always should be some gray area. Right. So yeah, interesting, that whole debate. And it's ongoing. And also, I made that point just as we were getting ready to start, that all the haters who hated the Eastman episode, it's the placement of it. You would have liked it if the Glenn thing hadn't happened, I promise. Those moments had to happen. You had to see Morgan's how he got to the all life is precious. And you had to see also that he wasn't absolute either because his training, like we were saying, we don't think it was finished.
Right.
Eastman's training was sort of cut off short. And Eastman wasn't – Eastman was pretty absolute in what he did, but you could tell he still had a lot of conflict in his brain because of what he did to the prisoner that he had. Right. But I think without seeing all of that, without getting a nice long explanation into that, then Morgan's behavior just feels kind of petty. You know,
Right.
it doesn't make any sense. But
Right.
seeing all of the things he went through makes it important.
Yeah, you'd be
make,
pretty confused by this episode if you hadn't watched Here's Not Here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, like, you'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with Morgan?
Right. And you wouldn't understand his journey. It wouldn't feel like part of a journey. It would feel like he's just being like contrary to Rick. And it's like, this is what Rick wants, but does he really want it? Yeah.
I can't say I agree with Morgan.
No.
Because to me, if you bust into my home and you start killing my people, I am killing you back.
And I think
I'm not just letting you go.
I can see where Morgan's coming from sometimes when it comes to, you know, random people. Maybe you don't know. You need to find out before you make a final decision.
I understand why he didn't kill the wolf back when he first encountered
but I don't understand after having that encounter with the wolf at the campfire and having to he didn't kill them, but
he didn't make it easy for them.
No, he didn't. I don't understand why he wouldn't have then killed them after that. That's the thing I don't get is it's obvious that this person didn't learn anything and didn't change and doesn't, you know what I mean? So I don't understand. I can't, that's the part I can't wrap my brain around is again, like if it's some random person, I can understand like, let's, you know, it makes me think of that kid that they got way back in season 2 or whatever when they were on Herschel's farm, the one that they took and they brought him back and
because he got his leg on the
because he got his leg stuck on the fence and when they were trying to decide what to do with him and whether to kill and you know and Shane was absolute you know yes we need to kill him and Rick was like we need to think about it, we need to talk to our people and blah blah blah. It's almost like Morgan is becoming. It's interesting how like Rick became more Shane-like in his, you know, being absolute about stuff. Not all of it, but just the absolute stuff. And then here Morgan sort of flipped into where, you know, Rick was more conscientious back then. He thought more back then. I mean, obviously, when you have all of those experiences, you learn.
You become a little hard.
You become a little hard. Yeah, I get it. So, yeah, so those scenes were pretty interesting. Laid some groundwork for some stuff that's going to come up later as well. That's trust me, this is not the last time we're going to see, and not even so much about the wolves, but the Morgan and Carol in conflict. You know, Rick and Morgan in conflict, and also on that as part of that, Morgan and Carol being in conflict is going to be something that comes up again. Another big thing that happens in the episode. It doesn't happen until the very end. It's like the very last moment, but it's pretty large and sets up pretty much everything that happens in episodes 8 and then episode 9, which is that they didn't notice when the wolves attacked them and ran the truck into the wall that the truck hit a large portion of the bell tower, which is right next to the wall. And they spend the whole episode going back and forth showing like little parts of it are like, this part's cracking, that part is cracking, it's giving way here, it's giving way there. And then the very final scene, in a tragic twist of irony, right by where Tobin and Rick were fixing the fence, the wall, actually, the wall around Alexandria, sorry, not the fence, really. They were repairing that area and, you know, making it more solid and doing a good job. It was becoming more solid, and it was right by where that truck came in. And then there was just like crack, 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 and then the tower just gave way.
Unfortunately, too, it was them banging on the wall that brought more walkers into that area, which caused that wall or the tower to fail.
Yeah, probably all
because standing on itself without the bodies pushing against it, it probably would have stayed up a little while longer.
Or if it had fallen, there's no guarantee it would have fallen in that direction. It might have fallen to the side, or, you know, or just like parts of it might have fallen. And, you know, especially if they'd built up the wall again and braced it and made it, because they were talking about like double bracing it and doing all this other stuff to make it stronger. If they'd had the opportunity to do that, and then it sort of gave way to the side or leaned or part of it broke over, it wouldn't have been. But that's true. Like all the walkers were pressing up against that area.
They were making so much
noise. It
noise.
made it worse. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And
And then,
And then.
in the beginning of the episode, we get to see what happened with Glenn.
Yep.
We get to see how when he fell over, Nicholas was on top of him. Then they panned down, and they're ripping into Nicholas.
Mm-hmm.
And then Glenn has the opportunity to pull himself underneath a dumpster. Now, 2 things. First thing, Glenn was only gone for 2 episodes, or 3 episodes, people. 3 episodes. There was no break in between. 3 weeks.
So it was 3 weeks.
We didn't know about Glenn. For all you Game of Throners out there.
That's like 12 Jon Snows. Okay? 12 fucking Jon Snows.
Jon Snow may have technically been gone for less episodes, but more time.
Hell yeah. Now that is a cliffhanger, motherfuckers.
Exactly.
Okay? So
2, I know that the majority of people are upset because of a couple of things. I think one of the main things is, how did he just drag himself underneath the garbage without anything getting to him? Okay, guys, you do realize that Tyrese was once completely covered in walkers and made it out without a scratch. You do know that Daryl's brother sawed his own hand off and made it through the city that was completely covered in walkers too, right, guys? This is not uncommon for this show to do things like this. This is the world. I'm not making any excuses or anything, but we should know better,
right,
as fans of this show, that shit like this happens all the time.
Yeah, no shit. Like, people shooting guns and miraculously no one gets hurt. I mean,
or
it's
Herschel's Infinity shotgun at the end of season 2. Like, there are so many unrealistic things that happen in this show. You can't just get mad about this. Now, I think that the part of the reason a good majority of people were upset was because if you're a big fan of the comic book, Glenn is supposed to die by the hands of Negan. And in general, no one wants Glenn to die. Glenn is a favorite. But if he's going to die, it has to be that way. Right. Lucille's got to get him.
Right.
So then to see this, and then they felt a little duped because it was like a fake out, but I don't know.
Here's the thing, and I've gotten to that point in the comics. I've seen it. I know that he dies in the comics, but I also know that the show has made some changes from the comics.
They've made
and I
so
knew
many changes.
Negan was coming. Everybody had been talking about it, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan had been cast, and we knew he was coming. So you knew that Lucille was going to happen, and you knew someone's going to die. So we knew that moment's coming. So whether or not it was going to be Glenn, like, as much as it's sort of connected to this, I just really didn't feel. First of all, I didn't feel like crawling under the dumpster was so unbelievable.
No.
It was right there. It was believable. I don't know. It's difficult.
What was the most unbelievable to me was the fact that he was screaming and no zombie bit his face. And it's very common for the walkers to bite faces of people who are like screaming and things like that.
Right.
So that was the most unbelievable thing for me.
Right.
Him getting himself under that dumpster was not unrealistic for me.
No, exactly.
And then he did a good job. He got them with their knives so that they laid and created
He gave himself his own barrier.
Exactly, of walkers.
Yeah, and then after a while, he's quiet. They all went away.
Right.
And he was able to crawl out later. It's all, and that's the thing. If this had happened in like season 1 or 2 when he didn't have as much knowledge, very unbelievable. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But Glenn's gotten in and out of some pretty shitty situations before. This isn't as crazy as some of the other things that have happened in and around him.
Right.
Things he's seen actually work or things that he's been a part of.
Mm-hmm.
So the actual getting away from the walkers, like, it never bothered me. Like, and in fact, I kind of take the Chris Hardwick stance. Chris Hardwick was talking about how when people get upset about an episode. Like, if you get a chance, I have to recommend, if you have a chance, he actually, Nerdist did a podcast with Kirkman a few weeks ago or something like that, right around at the beginning of June. And because Kirkman was talking about the new series he's got on Showtime. So he was doing like a press tour for that. And they spent like a really long portion of the podcast talking about the Glenn death. And it's really interesting. I know some people, like, I have issues with Kirkman. Like, sometimes he feels really, comes off, I don't think he is, but he comes off kind of arrogant and kind of, you know, a little too full when he's on Talking Dead. But, you know, benefit of the doubt. And the way he was describing how they came to it. They knew that they were going to do that. And well, they were talking about Glenn, but they were also, the larger point was talking about the season finale. But they knew things were going to play out the way they were going to play out like a year and a half ago. They knew like mid-season, like end of season 4, like mid-season 4, that this is how they knew how they were going to introduce Negan, and they knew that the Glenn dumpster thing was going to happen. They knew that was going to happen. So
they didn't just throw this in there
exactly.
because of something that happened recently.
Yeah,
it had always been planned to be this way.
And I never really felt like that was what happened. But Hardwick takes a moment in the podcast to tell Kirkman that, you know, he gets sucked up in those moments where it's like, oh man, I really just, I'm frustrated because I want to know.
Right.
So, and you and I feel the same way a lot of times when stuff like this happens. It's like, it's funny that we looked at it and it was only 3 weeks because it felt so much longer watching it in real time. It felt way longer. But a lot of that was not 3 weeks of anger. I was like, I just want to know what's happening. Right. I just want to know what the answers are, you know? And it's difficult because, you know, in the way the world is now, you can binge, you know?
Right.
You can binge 5 seasons of Game of Thrones like Julie just did.
8 days.
And
it was 5.5 seasons. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's right. And she literally got caught up just in time for last night, which was the Bastards Bowl, which was fantastic. And like this culture, like we're used to sort of consuming. You can consume an entire series in a weekend if you want to. So, you know, the waiting, I think, is
people don't have patience anymore.
I know and that's frustrating because it's like I'm impatient, but it's like I'm impatient like nerdy smiley impatient. I'm like, I want to know like what happens, like what's gonna go on. And you know, I mean, we're gearing up towards a finale for Game of Thrones that you and I have been talking about, and it's equally as like, I don't know, because they're kind of off the rails in terms of, you know, they're outside of the book territory now, so nobody knows what the fuck's gonna happen.
Right.
And it's like heading into all of that, it's like, well, what are they gonna do? And I just didn't approach. I just always, and I hate to make it seem like I'm glass half full because I can be pretty negative and sarcastic about lots of shit. But in this instance, I enjoy the show so much and I consider myself a fan, and I'm not like downtroddening anyone else. But for me, I get being excited and I get being, you know, wanting to know, like just dying to know what happened, and you're not telling me what happened. And to be fair, that very first episode after Glenn, to show the Morgan one, it was like we said in the last podcast, they chose
Fucking
like
the
Dead. One place where they could put it and get the ultimate fuck you, which was right after the Glenn episode. And maybe that was on purpose, maybe it wasn't, I don't know. I thought it was pretty funny, but I just, like, for me, I knew they're going to have to tell us eventually. So he's either dead or he's not dead. And like,
and they promised that episode, they promised you will find out. You may not find out right away, but there will be a conclusion to what happened to Glenn.
Right.
They were never going to just leave us hanging with that. And I think that would have been really frustrating. But to me, I watch TV for entertainment.
Right.
That's why I watch these shows. I don't watch these shows because, it's nightly news and I'm going to get pissed off at another shooting, in the town next to me. I watch the shit for entertainment. And there have been plenty of shows that I've given a couple of episodes, even a couple of seasons, and I'm like, nope, can't do it. I'm not a fan. It's not drawing me in. But other people love it. And that's great.
Right.
Watch your show. I don't want to.
Right.
And then there's this show that I have been a fan of since day one. Since Halloween when it premiered, I have been just all over the show and I have loved every bit of it. Even Lori with her fucking frustration and everyone in between. I have enjoyed every minute of this show.
Right.
And I have given them my devotion and I've never really been upset. Sure, they kill off a fan favorite, Herschel. I cried when Herschel died, but I move forward because I'm rewarded in the end. So with this Glenn thing, when he came out, when we see him, I cheered.
I did too, and I think when you said that thing about Herschel and we were upset and you cried when Herschel died and got his head chopped off, it was brutal, it was awful, and it was really sad. But I think that that's the mark of a great show. If you're so invested in a show that someone dying, that's such a beloved character, if it affects you that much, then the show has done their job.
Right.
And I think
it's supposed to be a roller coaster ride.
If it had turned out that Glenn had died in that moment with Nicholas, I would have totally been sad. He's a great character. He's had a great journey.
And if he's going to die, it's going to be by the hands of Negan.
Right. Right. Exactly. I mean, and if he died in the dumpster scene, it is what it is. You have to enjoy the character he was and then be able to move on from there.
Right.
If just the death of one character is enough to make you say, forget it, I swear off the show,
I'm sorry for you.
Yeah,
I'm sorry that it upset you that badly. I'm sure it wasn't their intention.
Yeah.
They don't want to lose viewers. Why the hell would they want to lose viewers? They were not intentionally trying to upset you.
Right.
They're trying to play with your emotions because that is the mark of a good show. How many times were you all over the place while watching Breaking Bad?
Right, exactly.
I was happy and then pissed off. I wanted to slap Walt sometimes. I wanted to slap Jimmy or Saul sometimes, but I still watch the show and it's one of the best things I have ever watched.
Yeah, and that's true. And I think, and I get it. I get that, the little things they did. They took Steven Yeun's name out of the credits. And I understand. And people feel like that was a fake out because the way actor contracts are, if your main character, even if you die like mid-season, your name technically would be in the credits pretty much the whole season, but they took them out.
Right.
They specifically took them out. And I get it that people feel like they were over-toyed, like their emotions were over-toyed with. Like, we don't know what's happening with him, but you also took his name out of the credits. So I wonder in hindsight, and of course in hindsight's always 2020,
right.
I wonder if the one thing the Walking Dead people would like to change about that is I wonder if they could go back and just insert Steven Yeun's name back into the credits, if they would, knowing that I really feel like that's the thing that just drove people apeshit. Because they really felt like,
I agree.
And because that's your plot choice and what you're doing wasn't meant to deliberately mislead or do anything with the fans. It's almost like you literally had to do the same journey that Maggie had and all the other people where they're like, you know what? We have to trust that Glenn's going to come back.
Right.
So we, as the audience, had to trust that Glenn was going to come back. If he was able to come back,
and that's the situation they wanted you to be in.
Exactly. So they set that up that way on purpose. They did that on purpose for us. But I think the taking his name out of the credits felt cheap, I think, for a lot of people. And it didn't bother me as much as it bothered a lot of other people, but it's the one thing that they did do that I understand.
They kind of a little bit crossed the line. Yeah, and I can understand that. But there's a lot of people who are still talking now about how this one small thing killed his entire storyline, his whole plot line and everything. And I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't understand
I think I think that the A portion of this season was very consequences heavy. What happens when you make a choice? Sometimes consequences happen. Morgan is kind of it was dealing with that.
Yeah.
Glenn dealt with that too. It was Glenn's choice to cover for Nicholas and to take him in and try to reform him almost.
Right.
And it backfired.
Right. And
big time. It almost killed him.
I mean, and if you took what Glenn made that choice, Morgan made the choice with the Wolves, Carl made the choice to cover for Ron.
Right.
You know, there's a couple of different instances of those sort of following the same track. You know, Daryl made the choice to offer out Alexandria. You know, all these people had these moments where they made a choice, and whether or not they, you know, whether it was good or bad or whatever, we'll never know. You know, even if Nicholas wasn't with Glenn, he just as easily could have come across a band of walkers. And if he was by himself, he wouldn't have had, you know, a body shield, a dead body shield, you know.
So to me, I think moving forward, you know, next season, maybe if Glenn actually survives the Negan Lucille head bash, because I don't know who it's going to be.
We'll
tackle that later.
We're going to take a whole podcast episode to talk about that one in a few weeks.
But if he survives and he's in the next season, I can imagine a journey that Glenn might go on after everything maybe calms down a little bit, of what different choices will he make? Will he not trust people as often anymore? Will he go more down a Rick route instead of being that moral compass that we've always trusted him to be?
Right.
And that, to me, is intriguing. That's interesting.
Right. It is interesting. And I'm sure that whatever that path is that he's on, whether it's going to be Lucille, I would still even say that if he is the Lucille victim, there's still so much fallout that would come from that his presence coming back from that possible death in the dumpster, his presence is such a heavy presence with our group that, you know, they'll have their own journey based on how they feel based on him being the one that dies. So I think either way, again, same as the dumpster, it's 50-50. Either Glenn makes it or he doesn't.
Right.
And it's like they've made their choice. That, you know, the producers and the writers have made their choice on how that's going to play. And, you know, whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. You know, you just got to deal with it, and you've got to decide whether or not, you know, if you honestly feel like you're being toyed with, then I don't know, maybe you just shouldn't watch the show anymore. And I hate to say that, but it's like, if it disappoints you that much, it's like nothing drives me more nuts than people are like, you know, oh, this show has really like lost its, you know, this, that, or the other, and it drives me nuts, and I can barely watch it anymore.
Well, then why are you on a Facebook fan page complaining about it? Go away.
And it's always like Julie and I are trying to, like, you know, get involved in a conversation on Facebook, or, you know, and it's Facebook comments, and we'll jump in and say, yeah, we agreed, and da-da-da-da. And, you know, to be fair, we're trying to get people to listen to the podcast a little, but we also, like, we want to start a conversation, because part of the podcast is we want to
is because we love this show,
and we want to interact with other people that love the show. So, you know, we're trying to start a conversation where it's like, hey, what did you think of this? Tell us what you thought. We can talk about it in the podcast. So we comb through a lot of those comments, and God, there's just so many. It's like, I can barely watch this show anymore. Yeah. I end up, like, you know, playing on my phone whenever it's on. It's like in the background. It's background noise. But you take the time to come to a Facebook page and comment on how you don't like it anymore. And it's like, obviously it must still hold something in you that you want to do that, or, you know, you've got some sort of troll living inside you.
We're seeing that a lot on Fear. Also,
absolutely,
there are so many haters for Fear, but yet they waste their time and argue that the show is terrible to people who are enjoying it. But there are people like that all over the place. It's like going up to someone wearing their favorite band T-shirt and saying, your band sucks.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think about my favorite band. Right. That's why I'm wearing the T-shirt. Go fuck off.
Right,
you know?
Exactly.
But I digress.
Exactly. But I think this was such a polarizing moment. The whole Glenn thing was such a polarizing moment. It really divided the Walking Dead fan base into people that are like, fuck you, I can't believe you toyed with me, to the people that are like, I don't get it. It
didn't
just
bother me
didn't
that
bother me
much.
as much as
I
it
was
bothered
really
you.
happy to see him back.
Yeah, like I was tense. And I, if they had dragged it out much longer, I probably would have started to get pissed off. But it was 3 episodes. It wasn't, to me, it didn't feel like that big of a deal. They said they were, like, literally we were getting updates at every Talking Dead where they're like, don't worry, it's going to resolve itself. And it's like, if they say it's going to resolve itself, it's going to resolve itself.
To me, I felt less like they were trying to toy with me and more like they were just trying to get me to have that excited feeling.
Right.
I think they just wanted you to be exciid.
Right.
Like, is that so bad?
Right. And I think they talked about this in the Nerdist thing where they were like, I think either that or someone brought it up on one of the forums. It might have been on Spoil the Dead. I can't remember. But someone brought up the whole, they used it as an example, the Dallas thing where someone shot JR. And it literally was a cliffhanger. In June or May or whenever the show, broke for the summer, and you went months without knowing. And this was like the early 80s. It's not like you could get online to a Facebook group and like commiserate with someone for 3 months. You just had to shut the fuck up about it and deal with it. Or like sit with people, you're having like some, Chablis on a Friday night and you're like, ooh, who do you think shot JR? Oh, I don't know. And this was like, and if you take, I think someone did like a math thing where they were like, it was either the JR one or something like that, where like the millions of people that watched that episode is like 3 times the amount of viewership that The Walking Dead gets for a weekly episode. And that amount of people was able to deal with 4 fucking months of not knowing who got shot and have no way to let it out or express their emotions other than like hanging out with your pals and go, oh, who shot JR? I don't know. And it's on People magazine cover and all that other shit. And it's like, dude, perspective. Like, I get it. Like, I know we get excited, but it's like, you gotta calm down, internet.
Yes.
And I know that's easy to say now. Hindsight's 2020, and we know what happened to Glenn.
Right.
But like even within it happening, Julie and I was like, we were talking about people were going ape shit, and we're like, I just want to know what happens to him. Like,
and then he came back, and I'm like,
yay!
Like,
yeah. And then he came back, and then it was like, okay, now we have other things to deal with. Like, okay, he's alive. Let's move on.
After that, I'm like, okay, the wall fell. Can we get back to that now?
Wall. Let's get to the wall, right?
Speaking of.
Right, exactly.
That is our 2 cents about Glenn. Probably not along the lines of what some of you feel, and that's okay, right? We can have differences of opinions and still like each other.
And like we were saying, we get it. Like and it doesn't have anything to do with like someone's a bigger fan or a better fan or anything like that. Like, we don't think we're better in any way. Like, it's just how we approach the episodes. We just think differently. We approach them in a different way, and we know that there are people out there that approach it in a different way. And obviously, since we both feel the same way, it's hard for us to wrap our brains around other people getting so upset about it. But like I said, especially with the name fake out, I get it. It's, at least that one I get. So, oh my God. So that's Glenn. So let's put him to bed. Brother. We knew that was going to take a while.
Yes.
But anyway, so jumping away. So that was episode 7. So jumping away from that, episode 8, start to finish. This is the mid-season finale.
Mid-season finale.
And we're so excited. We're going to make up songs about it. So start to finish, let's just briefly recap. The wall is breached and walkers invading Alexandria. Rick, Michonne, Carl, Gabriel, and Dianna take refuge in Jesse's house. And while they're in there, they discover that Deanna's been bitten. Carol ends up taking shelter in Morgan's house, and she discovers that Denise has been treating the captured wolf. Carol tries to kill the wolf. Morgan tries to stop her. But he ends up getting knocked out by the wolf. So at this point, they're both down and out, and he ends up taking Denise hostage, and he escapes. She's succumbing to an infection, and Deanna stages a last stand just while Rick's group is disguising themselves as walkers, and they're maneuvering through the walker horde. And then there's a post-credit scene where Daryl, Abraham, and Sasha are confronted by the Saviors, who tell them that all of their possessions now belong to Negan.
So
I really wanted to say all of your base is belong to us, but just the way it was worded, I couldn't help it. Anyway.
So this was a pretty active mid-season finale, but they tend to all be.
Yeah, it was
right.
It had a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Things.
Yeah.
Stuff and things.
Yeah, a lot of stuff and things.
Okay, Rick Grimes.
Okay.
So
a lot of things.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So in Now, I believe it was when Morgan went and grabbed Denise, right? We kind of didn't talk about that. But
yeah, there was that the last episode? Carol, towards the end of the episode, Carol sees
Denise and Morgan walking to one of the houses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She spies him and why would he need Denise?
So,
I'm going to go figure that out.
Carol has had her suspicions about Morgan. She goes over to his house because didn't he have him in this basement part of his townhouse or whatever the fuck it was?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Anyway, so she goes over there. She pretty much pushes her way through. She finds Denise treating this wolf and says she's going to kill him.
Yeah, he got to go.
He's got to go.
Got to go.
Morgan will not let this happen to the point that they fight.
Yeah.
They full on brawl with each other.
I know.
And I remember watching this and thinking Carol, don't kill Morgan. Carol, don't kill Morgan.
And then I was like, Morgan, don't kill Carol. Don't kill Carol.
So, unfortunately, though, it's a good enough distraction for the wolf to knock Morgan out.
Yep.
And grab Denise right at the same time. So we find out in this episode that Eugene was the voice on the walkie.
Yes, because then right after the show him,
So Eugene was the voice on the walkie. He says help, and then
help.
And then Rosita and Tara come in like badasses, save him, pull them in. He picks the lock, and they end up walking into this whole almost hostage scene.
Yeah, right as he's got Denise, and he's got a knife of some kind, at her throat of some kind, and then all of a sudden, whoop! Here comes Tara and Rosita
and Eugene, and they're just put your guns on the floor. They do, and he walks out with Denise.
Right.
And you're terrified for Denise, and you're mad at Morgan, and you're kind of mad at Carol too, because if she hadn't been so hasty on what she was doing, he was tied up. Denise was taking care of him.
Right. The situation
wasn't that necessary.
It was under control.
Right.
Yeah.
She made it out of control, and then Morgan made it worse.
Yep.
And now your town's doctor, your only doctor, is with a crazy man.
And scene. This is true. She's with a crazy man. And it's interesting because as that whole episode sort of develops, it's it's taken care of pretty early on. The whole he leaves with
I don't know what that word is.
Leaves with Denise, and when he leaves with her, then there's big long stretches of it's just the wolf and Denise.
Yeah, they go back and forth,
and he is toying with her. And trying to.
And she's terrified. She can barely walk.
She's literally shaking.
She's shaking.
Yeah.
Applaud for the actress who
Merritt
played
Weaver.
her.
She's awesome.
She's fantastic.
Yeah. Emmy Award-winning Merritt Weaver.
So he finally convinces her to go, but the wolf gets bit. And she's a doctor. She wants to help people. It doesn't really matter who that person is, even if you just took her captive. So she says, if you can get me back to my office, I can save you.
Right. I have a skill. I have a skill. We can fix this. Let's go. Because you're right. It was
on
right
his
on his
arm,
forearm.
And I think you get me there fast enough, and I can save you because she's going to chop the arm off.
Of course, yeah.
We know this works. So she's going to do that, and he agrees. You can save me. Yes, I can save you. Okay, let's go. And then they're going through, and the walkers are everywhere.
Yeah. They're
not very hidden or anything. And did he get attacked again first, or did Carol shoot him first?
Carol shot him, I think, because all she saw was the two of them running together, so she didn't have any frame of reference.
Right.
Carol shot him, and that's what drew that's what slowed him down.
Right.
And it like he like was pushed back and ended up being separated from Denise.
Right.
So and then the walkers swarmed him, and then he says, "Run."
Go.
He tells Denise, "Run."
Which begged the question of, did Morgan get to him at all? Was it Morgan's story and being helped and him being kind to him that made the wolf think, you know what, I'm already dead, so I might as well be a good enough distraction so this girl can get away?
Yeah.
Or was it Denise?
I err on the side of Denise because
I do
I
too.
think about when he was bit, and here's someone who was like not afraid to die. He just wasn't afraid.
Right.
The wolves definitely like went through this life with no fear.
Right.
They knew what their purpose was and they did it.
Right.
And so he wasn't afraid to die, but when he got bit, it really threw him for a loop.
Yeah.
He was scared. You could see it.
Yeah.
And when Denise made that offer, he changed.
Yep.
His face changed.
Well, and I think
he was
too,
very like, yes, I want, and he wanted to be saved.
Yeah.
And
there was a small. They were alone together for a small moment, weren't they?
Oh yeah.
And they were just kind of talking, and they didn't agree with each other. But she talked to him like a human being
before they got taken. Before he took her as a hostage.
Right.
Yes.
So I don't think it was Morgan. Although I don't think Morgan doesn't know that happened. So I don't think she ended up telling Morgan about it. It was just a her and him thing that she saw that in him. She saw him say go.
Right.
And it was an interesting moment.
Yeah.
I thought.
Oh, yeah. And I didn't catch it. I told you earlier. I didn't catch it the first time I watched it. I was so like, because like when he got shot, you're like, and you have the reaction, and then Denise runs. So Carol shoots.
Mm-hmm.
Carol then tells Denise, go,
Yeah.
run. And then Wolf is saying, run,
Yeah.
go. And so, but I didn't hear the wolf say run the first time I watched it. And then the second time I was like, son of a bitch. So he changed.
Yeah.
And yes, I do think it was Denise more than it was
I think
Morgan.
I do too.
Yeah,
I agree.
Definitely.
But what do you think, guys? Let us know.
Yeah. Reach out. Let us know. What are your thoughts?
What are your thoughts?
And then, sadly, speaking of bit, while they're once
it was
the
right
wall,
at the beginning when the wall first falls.
Wall falls. They're trying to find their way. They're gathering together. Get to the house. You know, they're all gathering up because they were all kind of around the wall to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing the repairs. Rick was right there with Tobin, and also Maggie had just come running up because Glenn had let the balloons free. He at the very end of the last episode, right before the wall is before the tower falls, Glenn's with Enid and they had those balloons and they let them go. So she knows it's a sign from Glenn. She's running towards the wall and Dianna's there and blah, blah, blah. So they're having this conversation. She like points and then the tower falls. Yeah. So anyway, so they're all kind of like, it's all dusty and very confusing and they're trying to get away. And in the confusion, Dianna, I'm pretty sure
Dianna saves Rick.
She saves Rick, but one of the things, she fell.
Yeah.
And at first I thought her injury was from like,
whatever she fell
hit,
on.
But then they look at it closely and it's a bite.
Yep.
So once they are holed up inside a house and they're able to sort of sit and take a breath for a second, they realize that Deanna's injured and they take a really good look at it and they realize it's a bite.
Yep.
And it's just, it's so sad because she's finally at this point where like I was saying in our last podcast about how she had been sort of sleepwalking because of Reg's death, and she had just sort of started to be getting her strength,
becoming
and
herself again.
Becoming herself again. She had given the ownership of like being in charge over to Rick, but she still was, you know, inspired by the town. She thought that they could do good things and change things and what have you, and she had plans. She was still showing plans for like, you know, doing vegetable gardens and stuff like that. And she's got this really
and expanding
nice,
and
you know, and she has this really, really touching scene with Michonne where she's telling, you know, where Michonne's like, that,
what do you want?
Good. What do you want? You know, and she wants those dreams to come true. It's just, it's just lovely. And then to know, like, towards the end when they Rick gives her the gun so she can do herself in. And
she doesn't use it on
She
herself.
doesn't use it. She shoots a walker. And then just that final moment where she's just
that scene.
She just, ah.
Yep.
And they get her,
That scene, it's actually talking about it right now.
It's giving me goosebumps. I know. She did
every time I watch it.
I love that actress. Tova Felcha has. And what's funny is, a couple of days ago I was watching an old Law and Order. If you've ever watched any old like OG Law and Order, Tova would be like a defense attorney for like all these like crazy, like there's a handful of people that showed up as attorneys on the opposing side over and over and over again, and Tova is one of them. And so as soon as they announced she was going to be on, I was like, oh, she's fierce.
Yep.
Like she's going to be really good. So she really exceeded my expectations playing Dianna, and she was just lovely and such a wonderful person on the show. And she had a really it's interesting because on this show, it's hard for people to have like a very, I don't want to say an uplifting death, but she had death on her own terms. It's very rare that people get
to have
swinging. She did. She was able to, and Rick let her do that because he knew, Reg didn't get to die on his own terms and all of that. And he knew her strength and who she was. And he gave her that gun and was like, you do it yourself. Like, I'm going to let you take care of it. And it was nice. It was a really fitting kind of, she was a great character. It was a great way for her to sort of end.
Yeah. So before
laughing at my notes.
Before Diana's demise, when they first get into Jesse's house, Carl and Ron have a moment in the garage. Ron goes to kill him, pretty much. They fight. Yeah. They make a bunch of noise. They break the door or the window or whatever. And Rick has to end up kicking down, like, the door that leads into the garage to get them out.
Yep.
And they all have to go up the stairs. But fucking Carl covers for Porch Dick Jr.
Again.
I
know. And it's really getting to be a thing because at this point, now it's starting to get more... He's getting more
violent and more dangerous.
And it's affecting more people.
Yes.
Because
of that fight, now there are walkers
are
in the
able
house.
To get into the house, onto the first floor.
Right.
So now they're pinned even further upstairs. And we all know, like, when walkers are swarming, it just draws more and more and more and more.
Of them, right.
So they know that the first floor is going to be breached, and they know that they're eventually going to find a way to make it upstairs at some point. So they've got to come up with a plan, that's for sure. Fucking Carl. I know.
Damn
Who
it,
does he think he is?
Stop it.
And
You're
meanwhile,
so much smarter than that.
I know. I literally on the board where we put I put Carl covers for Porch Dick Jr. and I put dummy because he is. What is he thinking?
I don't know.
Anyway,
I think he feels bad for the kid.
Well, he's gonna feel bad later when he only has one eye. So, in the meantime, they're holed up upstairs. Dianna is slowly, she's getting worse and worse. Carl and Porch Dick Jr. are doing their shit, and in the meantime,
Maggie's up on her lookout post.
Yeah, everybody's sort of spread out. There's other Alexandrians are holed up in other different houses here and there. We talked in the beginning that Morgan and them. So everybody's sort of in their little area. And meanwhile, on outside of Alexandria is Glenn, and he's just trying to get back in. So he and Enid are working together.
Yeah, while everyone else would want to get out, Glenn's trying to get in.
Right. So they're at there's like a church nearby, and they're like rooting around.
It's their new church. They haven't expanded on it yet.
That's right. And they rooting around. They're grabbing like flags and pieces of fabric, tying them together so they can get over. And part of me is kind of like, isn't there a hole in the wall they could just like walk through? But I know what they're doing. They're trying to find a spot where there aren't any walkers to get over the wall there. It makes sense. Then they're like banding together. They're looking for a gun. They're looking for bullets in all these different hiding places. And Enid's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, dude, the first thing I would do is I would hide a gun in here so that if I was ever stuck here, I'd have a gun. And
which is hilarious.
And especially since they literally find one hollowed out inside a Bible, very Shawshank Redemption.
Seriously.
Right. So, so that it's just hilarious that everybody's like, okay, we got to get away from these walkers. And Glenn's like, I got to get in.
Yeah. But he does.
And he does.
He gets in, and I start screaming at the TV because, we just found out he wasn't dead, and now it looks like he's about to fucking die.
Right. He's just like running headfirst into crazy, terrible situations. That's what Glenn likes to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, the episode, it ends on a total cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So we know that Glenn's fighting for his life right now, trying to get to Maggie.
Yep.
Maggie doesn't have much more time up on the lookout.
Yep.
Eugene, Rosita, and Tara and Carol and Morgan are all together now.
Yep.
Denise got herself back to
the hospital,
her little hospital thing, and then Rick, Jesse, and the rest of our gang is in Jesse's house. They decide we're going to cut open a bunch of walkers, cover ourselves in sheep blood, and then walk out hand in hand. And as the episode closes, we just hear, Mom, 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 Mom.
And you're just sitting there going,
shut up.
But like, stop fucking shit up, Sam. Shut up. Stupid fool.
Then after the credits, we get a little look at Sasha, Abraham, and Daryl. They're in their fuel truck.
Fantastic thing to do, because it was like watching a Marvel movie where we're like, stay to the end of the credits.
I know, right?
There's something exciting. Although, to be fair, fuck you, AMC. If time-wise, if you recorded it on your DVR, like,
you didn't get to see
maybe
it.
I did, you didn't get to see it because it actually bled into the first minute or so of whatever the next show was.
Which was Into the Badlands, wasn't it? That's what was playing at the
time.
Was it? I think
so. God, who the hell knows?
So
anyway,
they're riding in their fuel truck, and there's a bunch of bikers just on the road, and they get out and they get everything you own now belongs to Negan. And I was expecting a who's Negan?
Right.
Didn't get it, and I was very disappointed. But that's kind of how it ended, and you're left wondering, like, first you're like, shit, yeah, Negan's finally
that's
here.
right. Negan's finally coming. Oh, Negan's coming.
Yeah.
Oh, right. We're not supposed to be excited about this.
Yeah. I mean, I am because, I'm such a comic fan. It's fun to watch where they're going with the show and how closely this season paralleled with the book, because they had strayed so far away from the book lately.
Yeah.
So to hear, Heath was from the book, and to actually get some of these characters,
actually be
from
fleshed
the book,
out a little bit more.
Yeah. And now we heard about Negan, and you're like, oh shit, when's he gonna come? Oh no, who's gonna die? Like,
yeah, exactly. So yeah, and it's nice to have a good. It's been a while since they've had a good, someone to fight against, like a good antagonist.
Yeah.
Because they, was the last really good one the governor?
Well, yeah. I mean, we had the termites, but it wasn't really like a heavy duty.
I know. And in their case, they were more like a group.
Right.
As opposed to like a singular person,
right.
So like, yeah, governor.
Yep.
Last time.
But yeah. That's our episode, guys.
Yeah.
What did you think about the mid-season finale? Let us know. Go ahead and give us an email at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. You can always find us on our Facebook. Just search Aim for the Head Podcast. All of our other social media links are on there, like our Instagram, which is Aim for the Head Podcast. And you can also follow us on Twitter at AFTH Podcast. It's at.
Right, and I'm doing the hashtag. I'm doing the hashtag sign. You can't
Diana's
see
like
it.
hashtagging me, and I'm like, it's ad. I don't know what you're talking about. Also, if you are on our Instagram, or if you want us to see something, do a hashtag AFTH podcast, and we will definitely see it on there.
Yeah, we'll see it for sure.
But as always, thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time. I'm Julie.
I'm Diana.
Thanks for listening.